Imagine you're speaking with someone close to you, and they're telling you about a difficult situation they're going through. It's a struggle for them, and it's making them feel bad about themselves. How do you hope to respond to this person? Right now, all of us are probably thinking the same thing, and it comes down to these two words: be kind. You can come to this insight in so many ways, through your community and upbringing, religion, even social science. Sorry. All of these sources tend to agree that when you're kind, you make the world a better place. Now, I'm going to change the scenario just a little bit. Imagine you're alone and you're just thinking about your own painful situation. I'm going to add two more words to my slide. Be kind to yourself. Should you be kind to yourself? What does it even mean? And does it also make the world a better place? About 10 years ago, my research team and I got interested in these questions, and we set off on a journey to try to answer them. And I want to share with you some of what we have learned. But it all starts with the realization that right now, in this imaginary scenario, we're not all thinking the same thing anymore. So when psychologists try to measure this quality, it turns out that most people are right in the middle of the possible range of scores. And a distribution like this shows up when people have some doubts about the concept. So are they warranted? Let's dig deeper in. So psychologists have given a name to this tendency, which is self-compassion. And it's a healthy way of responding to distress. It involves engaging in compassionate responding and avoiding uncompassionate responding. But I've emphasized self-kindness, but there are many other parts to it. So self-kindness is being supportive and accepting to yourself, but there's also common humanity, which means thinking that everyone has struggles in life and our problems are widely shared. There's mindfulness, which is keeping your negative thoughts and experiences in a balanced perspective. And then there are the uncompassionate side of the circle. They're the opposites of all these things. So self-judgment, harsh self-criticism instead of self-acceptance and self-kindness. Isolation, feeling alone in your problems as opposed to seeing them as shared. And over-identification, getting so absorbed in your problems that they seem to define you and tell you what your future holds. So many components here, but they all work together as one system, which determines how self-compassionate you are. There are now more than 4,000 published studies and dissertations on self-compassion. And what most people want to know from these studies is, does engaging in self-compassion improve your well-being? And the simple answer to this question is yes. Self-compassion's been associated with reduced psychopathology of all different kinds. It's associated with increased subjective well-being, which is things like your life satisfaction and happiness. Improved psychological well-being, which adds in things like your sense of meaning and purpose in life. And improved physical health and health behaviors. So, if it works so well, why are people shy of self-compassion? 3 of the most common reasons are really cultural beliefs that self-compassion will make you lazy, weak, and self-indulgent. And I want to share with you that most research on this topic doesn't support any of these cultural beliefs. So, self-compassion is associated with greater resilience to negative life events. Resilience is strength, not weakness. It's associated with active coping and persistent health behaviors. Coping and health behaviors take work. It's the opposite of laziness. And it's associated with stronger self-improvement motivation. Working on your weaknesses is the opposite of indulging them. So research doesn't really support the cultural view of self-compassion, but I still wonder if there isn't some wisdom of the crowd in people's hesitancy toward it, even if we don't know yet what that wisdom really is. So my research team has begun asking some different questions about self-compassion than whether it exists or whether to engage in it. We've started asking questions about when. And our studies focus on moments of decision, so not general well-being. And we've guided our investigations with this question. When people have been self-compassionate throughout their lives, and they've dealt well with all the difficulties they've encountered, how might that affect the way they think about possible difficulties that might come from their decisions in the future? Possibly, if you've dealt with all your past difficulties well, you won't be so worried about the negative things that could come from your decisions in the future. So our studies have all followed the same basic plan. We measure people's self-compassion, we challenge them with some kind of a decision, and then we see what decisions they actually make. We've challenged people with gambling games and investment scenarios and memory games with different point schemes for performance. And in all of these situations, people higher in self-compassion take greater risks for gain. This is even more pronounced when we raise the stakes and we make the possibilities of penalties for loss and error really high. We've challenged people with positive emotional experiences, like having your favorite sports team win a major match. And we've looked at how long people savor those experiences after they happen. People higher in self-compassion savor those experiences for longer, which by extension means it takes longer for them to be involved again with day-to-day worries and concerns. They postpone that worry for longer. We've challenged people with self-change. My favorite one is getting people to give up social media for 10 days. People who are higher in self-compassion go into that challenge with less fear of failure, less fear of missing out, lower concerns about all the downsides of giving up your social media for that length of time. We've challenged people with a false accusation. In one study, we accused students of plagiarism, which they did not do. People higher in self-compassion respond to that accusation with less anger, and they fight back less against that false accusation. And we've challenged people with a strong written advocacy, telling them that they need to reduce meat consumption to fight climate change. And people higher in self-compassion, when they read that advocacy, feel less guilt afterwards. And in turn, as they feel less guilt, they also feel less support for what the advocacy is asking them to do. So, not worrying about potential dangers is a theme through all of these responses. But I want to bring out some other things. First of all, not all of these outcomes are desirable. They suggest there's better and worse times to engage in self-compassion. The better times seem to be when your negative emotions like fear and self-doubt, might be holding you back from doing something good for yourself, or making it hard for you to enjoy the present moment. The worst times seem to be when your negative emotions, like anger and guilt, let's say, are actually protecting you and motivating you to act on your own interests and goals. These findings also suggest some times to engage in self-compassion that the original theory of self-compassion does not suggest. So after positive experiences, not just negative and distressing ones, and before you go into a self-change, not after you're already involved in it, struggling with it, and maybe failing at it. The main idea I want to leave you with is that self-compassion has many more uses than we have yet imagined. It's a healthy way to respond to distress, but it also affects our decisions about the future, even in the absence of distress. People's hesitancy towards self-compassion also makes sense, at least to me, when we look at the mix of effects that it has on people's decisions and actions. So, yes, beating yourself up after a disappointment or a failure might not help your best self to step forward, maybe ever. But an emotional policy of soothe first and ask questions later might not help your best self to step forward either. So I want to return to my original slide and add 2 more words. Be kind to yourself and decide when, by thinking about what exactly it is that your negative emotions are telling you and maybe helping you. Undoubtedly, there's wisdom in self-compassion, but wisdom involves one thing more, which is knowing when to be self-compassionate and when to wait. Thank you so much.